Hey, this is Elise and welcome to The Crunchy Ginger. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm going to show you a few small changes that you can make in your life to live a little greener and save a little money. And today is going to be the first in a series of talking about how to cook your way through your fall or winter CSA basket, subscription produce box, or farmer's market haul. You can see here we've got kind of an assortment of typical fall, winter vegetables, some root vegetables, some beets, some carrots, potatoes. This crazy ugly thing is called a celery root, they sometimes call it. Squash, some cabbage. One of my favorite things to do with all produce, but specifically with fall winter produce, is roasting. So roasting is going to involve cooking your vegetables at a high heat, and when you do that, the sugars, the natural sugars in the vegetables will break down and caramelize. And what happens is you take these ordinary vegetables and turn them into something with like a really deep, complex flavor. One of the great things about a CSA box or basket is that you get all this amazing, super fresh produce. And sometimes it might not be stuff that you ordinarily would pick up at the grocery store, or even if you just go to the farmer's market. I know for me that like for years and years I would go to the store and I would buy like the same bag of organic spinach and like maybe some baby carrots or whatever, some out of season tomatoes, and kind of call it a day because I didn't know what all that other stuff was. But having to cook with all of these unfamiliar ingredients really made me a better cook, and it's really made me have a better appreciation for lots of different kinds of produce. So my theory is that you can roast anything. Anything can be roasted. So today I'm going to show you how to roast all of these more typical vegetables like your potatoes, your carrots, and I'm also going to show you how to roast cabbage. This is one that I always sort of struggle with finding things to do with in my basket. And beets. People that don't like beets often really love them when they're roasted with that sweet caramelized flavor. So this guy's a celeriac. He's a celery root. This comes in a lot of farmers market baskets, and this for sure was a vegetable that I had never seen before. It's got a like real celery flavor, but the texture, the consistency is kind of like it's sort of potato-y or apple-y, and it's really great in soups and stews, but it's also very good roasted. In order to use it, we're going to need to take off this weird, ugly peel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It has a really strong flavor, but it's going to be excellent in our vegetable blend, and we are going to roast all of this stuff together. I like to roast at 425. I think it's kind of a great temperature for most fall, winter sort of produce. And when you cut all of your produce up in bite-sized pieces and in similar sized pieces, you can roast them all together on the same sheet pan, which makes this quick and easy for any night of the week. You can grab any random assortment of stuff that you've got and turn it into an excellent meal. Please stay tuned to the end of the video, and I'm going to tell you some of my favorite ways to use all of these roast vegetables. All right, so I have finished chopping up my vegetables for the medley portion of my roast, and I've tried my best to keep my pieces of similar size. I definitely didn't use the whole squash. I'm going to save him for something else later this week. But what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to call this kind of a roasting recipe, meaning that you can apply it to anything that you've got. You got your bowl of veggies like this, similarly sized. You take your olive oil, a couple of swirls, just like that. If you don't want to use olive oil, you can always use something like avocado oil. Coconut oil is another good choice. And I like to keep my salt in a salt cellar like this, mostly because I can just grab a couple pinches of it, and it makes it really easy for me to see how much salt I'm adding, and it also takes forever to like do the grinder. I do have a grinder of pepper. If you've got seasonal herbs, rosemary or thyme or sage, anything else like that that you like or have around, always excellent with these flavors. One of the amazing things about cooking produce in season is that what grows together goes together. And that means that all of the flavors that you're going to find growing at the same time in the same region are going to taste great together. So it takes the guesswork out of having to put together ingredients that you might be unfamiliar with. You know that if it comes in your basket, you know that if they're selling it at that farmer's market together, the flavors are gonna just work. So this is an example of that. I'm gonna grab a spatula and toss all this together. The trick is you want enough oil to kind of coat everything. You don't want it to be swimming in oil, but you also need enough that it's going to get a little bit on each piece. So now we're going to put this on our sheet pan. So when you roast, you want to give your vegetables some space. They need a little bit of breathing room. If they are too close together, they will steam and not roast. So make sure that you go to a second sheet pan if you need to, so that they all kind of have a little bit of breathing room. Especially these larger pieces, your squashes and potatoes and stuff. This is going to make sure that they get a good char all the way around, and that we get that good caramelization happening here. All right, cool. So the next thing I'm going to show you is my favorite way to do beets and cabbage. Did you know you could roast cabbage? You totally can, and it's delicious. This is obviously a half a head of cabbage. I already used the other half for something else earlier in the week. You're going to want to wash them, slice them in half, take out the sort of core part that's in the middle, which I guess must have been on the other half of mine. And then we're going to cut them into steaks. So we're going to cut them into like discs, rounds that are about maybe like an inch or so thick. So I'm going to start with this first one like this, and just kind of do your best to keep them even. It's a little bit hard to cut it this way so that it doesn't kind of fall apart, but we do our best. And then you're going to lay your sheets, your little cabbage discs. A couple pieces might fall off, no big deal. You can kind of just piece them back together there. And I'm going to lay them on my sheet pan like this. And again, you want to give them a little bit of space. So don't put too many on there to crowd them too much. If you need to, you can always go to a second sheet pan. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is a very similar situation. I'm going to take my olive oil or other oil of choice. Give them a little drizzle. Kind of work them around like that so that there's some underneath. I'm going to sprinkle them with my salt. Just get a good coating on each piece. And the same with the pepper. The third thing I want to show you is how to roast beets. This is my absolute favorite way to roast beets. And they are a little pink and they will stain your hands a little bit, but I find that it washes right off. If that kind of bothers you, wear some gloves or something. You got your beet, you wash your beet, don't bother with peeling it. You're gonna cut off this top part. I like to cut off the sort of tail, the sort of rat tail part also. And then I take them, and very similarly to the other things, I'm gonna cut them in my bite-sized pieces. Let's see here, for this guy, we'll do kind of thirds like that. And I kind of, because I'm roasting this at the same time as all my other vegetables, I want to try to keep the pieces, again, a similar size. So I like to take a sheet of aluminum foil like this. I set my beets with the skin still on in here like this. Drizzle with my oil. Generous sprinkle of salt. And some cracks of pepper. Now we're going to tuck him up in a little packet like this and tuck the ends up just like that. Now I'm going to set this on the pan with my other stuff. So I'm going to roast all of this in the oven at the same time. I'm going to turn the oven to 425. If your oven runs super hot, you can adjust it down a little bit, but I find 425 to be a really good temperature for my oven. All of this is probably going to take 30 or 40 minutes. And you'll know that they're done when they start getting a little bit of char around the edges. So let's pop them in and we'll check back in a few minutes. All right, I'm gonna give my cabbage a flip here. Oh, that looks beautiful. We're about 20 minutes into my cooking time. A couple pieces get left behind, but that's all right. There we go. And I'm going to give my other veggies a stir as well. They're looking nice too. So I went ahead and pulled out my cabbage because it was ready a few minutes before the rest of my vegetables. And we know it's done because we can see this just gorgeous char on all of these pieces. It just looks beautiful. It's going to taste delicious and sweet. And here's our beet packet. I'm going to go ahead and open him up very carefully because it's going to be super steamy in there. There we go. Nice. And I'm going to test it with a fork just to make sure they are fork tender, and they are. That fork slides right in there. So I'm going to let these cool off for a second, and then we'll be able to just use our finger to push off the skin of the beet, and they'll be good to go. So I went ahead and pulled out the rest of my vegetables, and they smell amazing. You can see here that like our carrots, for example, we've got a beautiful char all the way around on these veggies. Some of our leek pieces got a little extra crispy. They look a little dark, but I just tasted one and they are crispy, crunchy, and oniony, and they taste amazing. When your beets have cooled off enough that you can reasonably handle them, all you need to do is just push the skin right off. Saves you the trouble of having to do all of that peeling beforehand. This method of roasting beets is absolutely foolproof. So as promised, here's a few of my favorite ways to use roasted vegetables. You can add something with a little more protein, like some chicken sausage or mushrooms, right to this pan. Roast it right along with this, and you've got a one sheet pan dinner. You can take your roasted vegetables and add them to the top of a pizza. You can add a hearty grain, some quinoa, some rice. Toss them together with maybe some goat cheese or some roasted walnuts, and then you've got a grain bowl. You can always throw them in a blender with some broth and make a soup. You can add them to your cold salad, just like they are. Especially good for squash and things like sweet potatoes. You can add them with some pesto, some noodles, or a simple sauce like garlic, olive oil, maybe some butter. Then you've got an amazing pasta. One of my favorite ways to use leftover roasted vegetables is in a frittata or an omelet or a quiche. Tonight I'm going to top this whole situation with some fried eggs. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you want to know more tips and tricks about how to cook your way through a CSA basket. Follow me at Instagram at The Crunchy Ginger, and check me out at thecrunchyginger.com.